gentlemen, a pleasant good evening. Welcome back to another episode of the Louis Sports Network. Before we get started, y'all already know what the deal, man. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure your post notifications are turned on. Make sure you're sharing on your social media platforms. Truly appreciate it. Hope everybody had a wonderful Sunday, wonderful weekend. Peace and blessings to everybody as always as we get ready into the work week once again, man. Shout out to you guys as always. Hope everybody is doing well. Peace and blessings, man. Now on to the video. So one thing I wanted to talk about that I think doesn't get enough mention is one of the more underrated years during the start of the ruthless aggression era before that. What happened to be 2002, and I want to mention two things. It's not only the year 2002, but I want to talk about how The Rock from late 2001 all the way to 2002 before he ended up leaving for Hollywood and would come back as Hollywood Rock in 2003, fared in the WWE. And the one thing I think that, in my personal opinion, we know that Rock's most successful gimmick was the People's Champion gimmick in 2000, when he had his most unbelievable year when it came to ushering in mainstream success, and the WWE as a whole. 2000 was its greatest. It was its greatest year overall. But that was The Rock's most successful. But I think if you look at The Rock's best work when it came to like wrestling and storylines, and The Rock has had plenty of great storylines, but I really feel that late 2001 to 2002, Rock was actually probably putting on some of the best matches he had in his entire career. If you look back, because when he came back in 2000, remember he had the classic match. He had a really good match against Kurt Angle at No Way Out in 2001. He had a classic WrestleMania 17 match with Austin, one of the best of all time. This was in their part 2 of their part 3 WrestleMania trilogy, because they met, 3 times as the main event in WrestleMania. And then you had when he came back after taking months off to go film the Scorpion King. He had a classic match against Booker T at SummerSlam for the WCW World Title. Then you look at, he had a classic match with Chris Jericho at No Way Out. No, I'm sorry, not No Way Out. It was at No Mercy. That was the match that Jericho won. Then you have that classic Survivor Series match in the winner take all, where The Rock ends up rock bottoming Stone Cold Steve Austin to get the decisive pinfall, in which Kurt Angle with the huge assist hitting Austin with the belt, and Team WWF defeating Team WCW ECW Alliance during the Invasion storyline. And even though the Invasion storyline was absolutely terrible because of WWE's desperation after Vince McMahon had bought WCW, at least with The Rock, it did not stop The Rock from still being able to electrify, being able to entertain the people, and was still going out and putting out great matches. His run was actually pretty damn good. Then he had a classic match at Vengeance that year, going up against Chris Jericho to determine the undisputed title. And it was one of 2 championship matches in that night. And then the final one was for the undisputed belt, in which Jericho ended up becoming undisputed champion by defeating Stone Cold with the interference of Booker T. And then you go into 2002, where Triple H makes his return, and he gets probably the loudest ovation that I've seen any WWE superstar ever get, considering that he had missed nearly 8 months with a torn quad, and that was such an amazing feel-good moment. And then even though Austin was having his problems with creative, and also he was having personal issues, and he was kind of living life in the fast lane, a lot of personal problems, a lot of health issues as well. Despite all that, The Rock then has a good match against The Undertaker at the No Way Out pay-per-view, even though Ric Flair interfered in that match. But then we get the NWO coming in, as Vince decided to bring him in due to his storyline with Ric Flair in kayfabe, and had to bring him because Ric Flair had really caused McMahon to kind of go over the edge and just through the scene of insanity. And Vince acted all menacing in his crazy promo that he did, because he wanted full control of his company, and that him having only 50%, Ric Flair had made his life a living hell and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember Scott Hall comes in, gets a loud pop when he does his signature "Hey Yo" shtick. He talks and all that kind of stuff, and Scott Hall genuinely loved that, because he always had a connection with the fans. But then you got Hulk Hogan. He speaks, the crowd goes crazy and starts chanting Hogan. And this was, Hogan left at the height of the whole steroid scandal in '93 and kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths. And people were kind of tired of the same shtick with Hulk Hogan in terms of the whole eat your vitamins, say your prayers, typical big boot, leg drop, punch, hands, Hulk up. They were tired of that. He speaks, the crowd chants Hogan, and then we have the classic storyline in the build-up to WrestleMania 18, which I thought the build-up was going to be good, but I questioned how the match was going to be between The Rock and Hulk Hogan. And let me tell you, and I already did a video on The Rock and Hulk Hogan. You guys can go check that out. But they had a classic match. They told an unbelievable story. The fact that it was in Sky Dome, where Hogan lost the world title to the Ultimate Warrior. One of the reasons why Hogan had a lot of fans that night, and still does to this day. And it was an unbelievable match. It was actually the match of the night, to be honest with you. And it's unfortunate because Jericho, who was undisputed champion at the time, him and Triple H went last. They had a solid match, but the problem is they were not going to be able to top what Rock and Hogan did and how they were able to captivate the audience in the way they did. It was like they just knew how to just draw the crowd and just able to have them be a part of this match, and the emotion that you felt, you know, when Rock was able to win that match over Hogan, and The Rock being put over as a kind of a passing to the torch by Hogan. And I loved how Michael Cole has said it. I think the SmackDown before WrestleMania, when he was like, wrestling's past, wrestling's future. And this was when The Rock was facing Scott Hall on SmackDown. I remember. This was in March of '02. So it was really special. And it really solidified The Rock to me in terms of his current run in what he was doing in late 2001 when he came back from, you know, a 4-month hiatus filming for the Scorpion King, and then, you know, his match with Hogan, you know, as a classic. And then because of that match, Hulkamania was reborn again for 2002/2003. And that in itself had a pretty solid run as well. And then The Rock takes some time off. I think his last match was against Chris Jericho on SmackDown before he took time off again to finish filming the Scorpion King. He came back at the King of the Ring. He had a classic segment with Booker T and Goldust. And I'm thinking, okay, that might be kind of like the highlight of The Rock and stuff like that. He ends up interfering in the Undisputed Championship match because at this point, The Undertaker's the Undisputed Champion. But the way we got there was because Triple H beat Jericho at WrestleMania to become Undisputed Champion. Then Hulk Hogan beats Triple H at Backlash with the interference of The Undertaker, and then he becomes Undisputed Champion. So then Hogan ends up jobbing the title to The Undertaker at the Judgment Day pay-per-view in 2002, and he ends up becoming Undisputed Champion. So Triple H did not get the title. The Rock interfered, and he pretty much had cost Triple H the Undisputed Championship. Triple H was pretty mad at The Rock for that, and then The Undertaker was pretty mad because he was basically saying, who the hell is The Rock to be coming and interfering in like in my match like that? So then we got Kurt Angle, who at this point is on top of his game. The Rock comes back, does a classic segment on my birthday, I remember, and it was basically about the build-up to the Vengeance pay-per-view in 2002 in a classic match. And it's one of my favorite matches, and I definitely recommend you guys to go watch it, between The Undertaker, Kurt Angle, and The Rock. Triple threat match for the Undisputed Championship. It was one of The Rock's best matches, and you could really tell that The Rock's in-ring work had gotten so much better, and it was so good. Angle and Undertaker, all of them put up amazing performances. I was so hooked on that match. It was so entertaining. It was so fun to watch. It was just, that match was just that good. And for The Rock to pull out on top to win the title was pretty crazy. And it was like, damn. And I was like, okay, so now where does The Rock go from here? Next thing you know, that very next night, The Rock goes up against future Hall of Famer and one of my all-time favorites, and a lot of your guys' favorites, y'all know too, the late great Eddie Guerrero. He puts on a very good match against Eddie for the very next night, and it was for the Undisputed title. And I was like, man, Rock is doing some really good work. I was like, there's no way Rock can top this. And by this point, Brock Lesnar had really become the next big thing and had really been making a name for himself, you know, in the first couple of months that he had been in the company. He became king of the ring. He beaten Rob Van Dam, had beaten Ric Flair, had beaten the Hardy Boys, you know, had beaten Hogan, you know, so he was doing some real big things, and the WWE was making him look strong. So then The Rock has a classic match there. And then also, I think in the global tour in Australia, has a real good triple threat match with Triple H and Brock Lesnar. And the best part about that match was the fact that Brock Lesnar was still able to look strong, and Triple H looked strong, and then The Rock looked strong. The Rock was able to maintain and win the championship there in the tour, which was a really good match, and it doesn't get talked about a lot, but that's a definite worth your time to watch that match. And then he had a good match against Triple H. There was a really good 8-man tag match on Raw in August of 2002. And The Rock also had a classic match with Ric Flair, and they did, the crazy part about that match, Flair and Rock did so much in the little time they had on a Monday night. And I think it probably would have been even better if it was on a pay-per-view, but it just goes to show you that The Rock was really putting in some really good work. And then I was like, damn, man, I was really rooting for The Rock in terms of how he really prepared himself. He was doing awesome. And, you know, he was obviously doing his, you know, Rock comedy routine with the shtick and all that kind of stuff, and the People's Champ, and finally, if you smell, la la la, the jabroni beating, pie eating. And then, what does The Rock do? The Rock goes into SummerSlam, puts on a classic match against Brock Lesnar. The Rock gets booed in Long Island, and the funny thing is, in Skydome in 2002, he was booed and played the heel. In 2002 in Long Island, The Rock is able to play the heel. Brock Lesnar was only the favorite because Paul Heyman, well, for two reasons. Number one, Paul Heyman's from New York, and SummerSlam was in Long Island. But number two, rumor has it that The Rock was on his way out. He was leaving to go back to Hollywood once again. And when the fans heard that, because by this point, the internet was out and it was WWE.com, The Rock was leaving and he was going to Hollywood. A lot of fans weren't happy about that, so they pretty much let The Rock have it. He has a classic match against Brock Lesnar, entertaining match. The Rock with the energy, the tone was set from the get-go, told a great story, and then he puts Brock Lesnar over. And Brock Lesnar is the youngest undisputed champion in WWE history. And let me put it this way. The Rock is a megastar, and he's put so many guys over in the business. Triple H, Austin, Mick Foley, as you saw with Brock Lesnar. You know, The Undertaker, like he's putting so many, Kurt Angle, he's putting so many guys over. Jericho, like the list is endless with the amount of guys that he's put over. And so then here's what happens. The Rock cuts a promo at the very end of that match, and he basically hints at becoming Hollywood Rock, basically saying his People's Champ gimmick is coming to an end. And so at the very end, he basically said that sing along with The Rock is over. He said, you want to boo The Rock and all this kind of stuff? Well, sing along with The Rock is over. And The Rock will always be your People's Champion if you smell what The Rock is cooking. And then he said the sing along time with The Rock, it's over. And he leaves the company. So the reason that I wanted to mention that was because I feel like it doesn't get enough mention of how great The Rock was during this run. He put on a lot of great matches. And then if you look at 2002 as a whole, you had the rebirth of Hulkamania, you had the triumphant return of Triple H winning the Rumble and winning the Undisputed title. You had the first ever brand split between SmackDown and Raw. You get to see we usher in the Ruthless Aggression era. You obviously have the classic, we meet John Cena and Randy Orton and Batista and Brock Lesnar. The OVW guys come in and, they all debut in 2002, from that incredible class from OVW. What else do you have? You have, Kane made his return, and, Booker T and Goldust had their classic segments that were just highly entertaining. You had the first ever Elimination Chamber. You had the return of Shawn Michaels, who comes back into the NWO, but then tries to reform DX with Triple H. then Triple H and HBK have their classic rivalry in a classic SummerSlam match. They participate in the first ever Elimination Chamber match, and Shawn wins the world title like on his first try. That told an amazing story. So many great things happened in 2002 that doesn't get enough credit for what kind of year that it was. And then the 3 stages of hell with Shawn and Triple H, and then you basically start to see, then Undertaker has a very good rivalry with Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar then loses his first loss at the Big Show at Survivor Series, and then this forms with Kurt Angle becoming the champion at the very end, which kind of leads into Kurt Angle having some good matches himself, with Chris Benoit at the Royal Rumble the very next year in 2003, and then obviously the classic he had at WrestleMania, with Brock Lesnar. But I just wanted to mention how 2002 was a real unbelievable year that doesn't get mentioned enough. And this is where Austin took his ball and he went home. That's something that's very important that also needs to get mentioned. Austin was having problems with creative. He was living life in the fast lane. He had issues with Deborah. It resulted that he got physical with his wife and beat her. And Austin was not appearing at events because of his issue with creative, and because they wanted him to job to Lesnar, but he didn't like the fact that there was no build-up. So it was almost like if Vince was pretty much screwing him. Kevin Nash tears his quad and is out for like 9 months. So many things were going on, and the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression and the Attitude Era is like officially over. You take the F out and put in E as in WWE. It really becomes entertainment, and we get introduced into the world's greatest tag team in Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas. So it's the first time we see Shelton Benjamin, and so many things happened, that year, and just unbelievable stuff, man. What The Rock was able to do in his last couple of months, in late 2001, all the way to the summer of 2002, and then 2002 as a year was just incredible. But ladies and gentlemen, this is your boy Louis with another one. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Bless up, live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for watching.